up, everyone? Welcome back to StrangeCast Player One versus the World's Life is Strange podcast. I am one of your hosts, Adnan. My co-host Adam is here. Adam, you here?
I'm here. I am not British, and I'm living life.
Yes, you are. After I just called myself Adam on the the outtake version of this. But yes, yeah. We're back again for StrangeCast. This is our usual regular episode. Obviously, we had the one with Anastasia, which you should check out as well. As I said, it was one of the most interesting conversations I had, especially about the facial capture. It still is stuck with me about the stuff that she was telling us about that and her little beat flag as well, which we love. A big fan of having Stace on here. But yeah, you should check that out. But this is our normal episode. And I don't know how long this is actually going to be. It could be long, it could not be, because obviously we covered a bit of news in the previous episode and we kind of wanted to get on that because it was hot and fresh. We only have one news segment in this episode, and then we've got a main topic, which is a bit of a bulkier one, hopefully. But as I said before, if you are new here, do please leave us a subscribe, turn on notifications, like and share with your friends. I think we're at 950 at the time of recording, so hopefully 50 more. We can get to 1,000 subscribers. I'd love to see that. And also, we are on podcast services as well. We're on Spotify with the video version. We're on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, all kinds of podcast services. So you can go over there, follow us, and subscribe and keep on top of episodes coming out. And we just hit 1,000 plays across all our podcast services.
Heck yeah.
So that is very exciting. And I'll put that on Do Not Disturb because we don't want any noise because we're recording a podcast. And Adam, we'll kick things off, which was obviously the meatier topic on this. I think we said we were potentially thinking about doing a live stream on the last podcast, but we never got around to it. And we felt we could tackle it in this episode, because obviously not as much content, but I think this is really interesting nonetheless. So obviously we had Gamescom this week, and we got our first look at The Expanse, a Telltale series, and we also got a release window. So we're going to Eurogamer for this article, and it was on the 24th of August at Gamescom's opening night live. We were treated to a closer look at The Expanse, a Telltale series. Along with this new teaser, which also comes with some behind-the-scenes chat with actress Cara G and the game's development team, and can be seen below, we now also have a release window, summer 2023. The developers have said that this new game will be unlike any previous Telltale titles, thanks to the introduction of, quote-unquote, several new gameplay elements, end quote. In The Expanse, players will have to work with mag boots to, quote-unquote, walk on walls and ceilings and utilize zero-G thrust to float through the void, end quote. Along with this gravity-defying setting, players will also be given a, quote-unquote, greater authority over the action, end quote, that goes beyond what has been experienced in past Telltale games. The Expanse, a Telltale series, is a prequel to the popular sci-fi TV series and was first announced at the Game Awards last year. The game features Kamina Drummer as the main protagonist. Drummer is one of the main characters of the Amazon TV show. You play Drummer, who works on the Artemis?
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Artemis.
Yeah, Artemis spaceship. And as you'd expect from a Telltale games, must make tough decisions as she negotiates her way through the edges of the belt. Mm-hmm. So quite a lot of interesting things I picked up on this.
Yes.
On The Expanse that we saw. So one is that my priority is to watch The Expanse. I'm going to start watching it this weekend. So hopefully I can kind of come back and feel a bit more comfortable with it. I'm actually going to commit to it now. Got Amazon Prime. There's no excuses. Obviously, as I said before, Telltale, Deck 9, I'm interested. I'm sold on it. So I'm very keen on it. A couple of things I noticed as well. And I'll come on to one of them later. But obviously, it was interesting hearing Cara G's thoughts as well, seeing her as well. I didn't realize she was pregnant either. I was like, oh wow! I was like, she must have been doing a lot. Must have been a crazy time for her to do working on this game. But the release window was a good one to start with. Summer 2023 gives us a time frame for when it's coming out. I'm happy with that. I think summer will be a good window for Telltale's return with The Expanse, and especially with Deck 9. I think they shouldn't face any major obstacles so far from games I can see in the future that will come out that time. But you never know. You don't want a Horizon Elden Ring situation. That's where you get cannibalized on each other. Like you want to avoid that at all costs.
Yeah, true that.
Because I think is there a new Sonic game coming out in November?
Yeah, Sonic Frontiers. I believe that is coming out.
Because I believe it's coming out very close to God of War's release date. That's all I can meme on.
Actually, it's coming out the very day of. That's right.
I saw a meme where it's like all other game studios like running, and then it's like Sonic Frontiers. It's
November
like
8th, and
God of
then
War or something. I was like,
I'm
God
just
damn.
making sure I'm right about that.
Just double check that for us.
Okay, so Frontiers is coming out November 8th, and Ragnarok is coming out November 9th. So they got a day apart. Dude, chill.
Oh, Sega. It's, oh my God, why?
Oh, God.
Yeah, that is like
insane.
that's like putting the Expanse out a day after the new Spider-Man game comes out for PlayStation, being like, oh yeah, let's see what happens there. Like,
yeah, right. No, it's like, yeah, like you said, but summertime, there's not a lot of like major blockbuster games that come out in summer. So I think they're playing a smart game here, because I originally said like April or May of 2023, which I think they could be ready by then.
Yeah.
But I think they're smart that like a game could come out April or May. So like even in the summertime, like July, August.
No, I think you're right about that. I think the time frame works well for them. Obviously, I think maybe they might reconsider depending on if something comes up in that time, and in that window where it's like they might get cannibalized on the sales. Yeah. I think they will probably reconsider. But that was interesting nonetheless that they gave us a release window, and it's good as well. It's early indication. It kind of gives, for example, like me, it gives me time to kind of watch the TV show, because it's like, is it 6 seasons or something, The Expanse?
I believe so. I believe it's about 6 seasons.
Yes. We become very underprepared with some of these like things. It's a lot of seasons. Obviously, you mentioned there's a lot of books as well.
Yeah.
And before I go into another point, which I note something I spotted in the trailer, which I don't know if you noticed, but we'll come on to that. I kind of wanted to ask you, obviously, and you mentioned it, the fact that they're doing this as a prequel to TV shows.
Yeah.
What did you feel about that?
I think it's one of the smartest moves they can possibly do, because one, they want a lot of people coming back to Telltale games. Telltale doesn't really have a good vibe to it. So in a way of just like, oh, it got shut down, and then The Walking Dead season 4, or final season, got canned. So there's some reputation that they have to build back up. So the fact that they're saying like, hey, this is a prequel to a TV series that not a lot of people have watched, because it is sci-fi and it is on Amazon now. So I don't think a lot of people got their hands on this TV show. So to build that back up, like, hey, you don't even have to watch TV series. It's a prequel, so you don't have to know anything. Just, you can play the game. Promise you'll be fine. And I think that's some good marketing. That is a prequel, so that's very smart of them.
Yeah, it absolutely is. I think like that was something that I didn't. I watched The Expanse quickly, and then I was like, I'm going to watch it before we start recording again, just to kind of get familiar with the gameplay and stuff, and like to kind of remember everything you said. And then you pointed out in the article that they said it was a prequel, and I was like, oh, that's actually really refreshing to see that, and it's a good position as well, because like as I said, as you said, like unless you're watching the Sci-Fi Channel, I don't know how interested and invested you are in The Expanse. And the main thing with that as well is it's a Telltale game. Telltale has such a big reputation with it, even though it's a different studio now since its collapse and reformatting. But I think like it's a good position, because like people will get invested in it. This might spark their interest into The Expanse, starting with a character as a prequel and kind of giving you a precursor to the Amazon TV show, might drive their viewers up. So I think like that, for me, great decision. So I think like that's one of the best things I found with Telltale series, because like even with the Tales from the Borderlands, I played Borderlands before, and I knew like Claptrap, but it was always kind of positioned in a way as like almost very inviting to a newcomer. I never really felt that. Like, I never really
same
felt like
thing with Walking Dead. Like, you didn't have to read the comics, you didn't have to read or watch the series. You could just play Telltale's The Walking Dead, and it was, like it had some bits from the comics here and there, like little Easter eggs, but for the most part, it was just its own separate title, which was fantastic.
Yeah. I like the aesthetic as well. Like when I was watching the pre-alpha, because pre-alpha footage, remember as well. Like, so it's very early in development. Like I feel like
so it's not even just alpha footage; it is pre-alpha.
Yeah, pre-alpha footage. But I like that. Do you like? I think there's one point where she's on the ladder and she moves out of the way to like dodge an obstacle. It's very Telltale-like. Do you like with the way that it's the aesthetic of like the design of like the prompt of like moving away? It was like I very much felt back in the day of like that 7 years ago of like being Telltale. And I think like Telltale will have to move forward and innovate, because I think like, as I said, it was very destructive for the studio the way that it did, where it was like, here's the Telltale tool engine, same game, same repeating formula. This character remembers something. I think we've come too far past that. And I don't think it's something you can't go back and revisit. I just think you need to evolve it now, because it's 2022 and there's always going to be an audience for it. So I'm like very keen on seeing more from the Expanse in that kind of sense. I hope it's like the next evolution of Telltale, and kind of gives the company a bit of direction in there. This is the interesting part that I mentioned on something, which was obviously we saw the interview and saw the kind of behind the scenes footage from that. And they had Stephen Frost, who is the game director on The Expanse, and just follow us on Twitter as well. Big up Stephen.
Nice.
And also for Deck 9 as well. You know, if you ever want to come on here and talk about The Expanse, if you ever want to come on the channel and talk in a separate interview segment, doesn't have to be StrangeCast, you know where to find us.
Go ahead, slide in the DMs. It's cool.
Just drop us a message. We're always happy here. We have a very small audience. We know that, but you know, people like the content we cover, which is obviously heavy. Life is Strange. Bit of a plug there. But so Stephen Frost mentioned some interesting things, and I think we'll come on to the gravity defining stuff, define kind of like settings, the kind of like the Dead Space-esque kind of gameplay elements, which I saw a little bit. That was interesting. But the main one for me, which I didn't realize, was that Zach Garris was there. And Zach Garris is no longer working at Deck 9. Because if you saw at the bottom left corner, it said he is Vice President of Story Development at Telltale Games. So he has moved on from... Yeah, so which was a bit wild, because I was like, so obviously, like, I think in itself, because of how God of War Ragnarok has been done at Sony Santa Monica Studios, where it's not Cory Barlog directing the new game, it's going to be a different one. They kind of have this rotation at the top of the studio. I think obviously if we have Deck 9 making another Life is Strange game, there'll be a new person helming it, which I think that will be kind of the way that they'll probably go with it. It might, I think if there's some kind of maybe kind of ideas, I think it might be one of their writers who will probably get elevated into the directorial seat, but that's a conversation in itself. But yeah, I didn't want to look at that, because I was like, Zach Garris isn't at Deck 9 anymore. Obviously, it's a Deck 9 Telltale Games collaboration, and he was obviously the sequels director. But I was quite surprised about it. I was like, he's a Vice President of Story Development at Telltale. And I was like, does this actually mean that he's left Deck 9? And I have gone on his LinkedIn profile. Zach, if you've got a private LinkedIn profile view, it's obviously me that's looking at it now. So he left Deck 9, because I don't think he's on Twitter from when I looked last time, but he left Deck 9 after 5 years and 3 months. Oh, if not longer, because Deck 9 used to be Idle Minds. 5 years and 3 months. He left Chief Creative Officer position in January 2022. So 2 years, 7 months.
Oh wow!
Left that position and started working at Telltale since January 2022. So
interesting.
Obviously, that there's a huge thing with that. And then on top of that, I was just Googling it then, and also on Games Press, it was only 4 days ago they put the press release out, which says Telltale expands its leadership team, adds Zach Garris as VP of Story Development. So that was kind of, it just kind of like caught my eye, because I was like, it kind of gives me... It gave me just perspective, because obviously the Deck 9 Telltale collaboration is very interesting, because I still feel like we don't know the full picture of certain things in terms of the publisher, or if one of them is publishing it, who knows? Like, there's still kind of like details on that, and it's also on the development side of like who's managing what's happening here, etc. Like all these kind of things. But and obviously, I think they're going to be in great hands with Zach as well. Like, you know, Deck 9 has kind of basically has built quite a lot of its name on narrative-driven games. Obviously, this is Telltale in a new kind of a new phase of its kind of like development studio. So obviously the narrative kind of like legacy kind of name with narrative games has always been attached to Telltale. So I think like it'll kind of like help keep that kind of like that image that they're kind of selling with the games that they produce. And I think Zach will be a great kind of like addition for Telltale at the loss to Deck 9, obviously. But obviously, you know, you have to keep moving on. But yeah, I that was one of the things that really caught me, even beyond the gameplay footage, even beyond the actual story, even beyond anything else with the Expanse we saw. I was like, that was something that caught me. I was like, oh, if we just have more an insight of what Zach Garris is doing now.
Exactly, yeah, and we get to hear his voice actor skills, because here's the thing: out of all the directors in all of video games, I feel like Zach Garris has like the most like professional sounding voice. I don't know what it is about it, but every time he gave like, here is our like, here's our operations on True Colors, and like his voice would just be like a professional voice actor's like dialogue. I'm like, dang, okay, have you done radio yet, or like what's up? But like, no, it's very exciting to see Zach Garris like into this game, like you said, into this leadership role into Telltale, because it does feel like a very collaborative, because he is very much in Deck 9, right, and then going into this, so I feel like it's going to be very Telltale Deck 9 that we absolutely love. So it's very much more integrated than we thought it would be.
Yeah, I think, like, as I said, like, I think like hoping obviously in the next couple of months we see more kind of like come out, and especially like interviews can be done on here, Deck 9 Telltale, just saying, if you want to come on here.
Just saying.
But no, like, I'd love them to come on here. There's always been an open invitation for any developers that we could first come on here. Like, we'd love to have you on here. But like, I think it'll be interesting to kind of see how the project kind of like is positioned in terms of who's working on what. It's two studios collaborating. It's quite interesting kind of dynamic that they've got, different kind of like key figures that are kind of popping up that we're seeing. And it's, again, like, it's things like back onto the conversation we had a couple of months ago about Montreal. I feel like that's kind of thing, like we know certain things, but we don't know the full picture yet. I think when we get more kind of like insight of who's working on what and who's doing this, that'll be the interesting part. So one more thing, because I feel like I've kind of exhausted myself at this point, but one of the things I wanted to ask you was, in that interview, they kind of give like a lot of insight into like kind of the way they're structuring things. Obviously, I kind of alluded to it before about it having this.
You wanted to ask me if I would score this game. I definitely will, for sure. They can ask me. Yeah, no, I definitely. Thank you, Adnan, for asking me that.
Yeah, for free.
Legitimately, actually, yes, I would do it for free. It would just take a long time because I'm working a full-time job.
Never do something for free. Never do it for free, even though we're doing this.
Just give me some cheesesteaks. It'll be fine. Just send me some cheesesteaks and we're good to go.
Royalties in cheesesteaks. That's what we need. But no, what I was going to ask you was that, because I got that kind of like vibe from it, like when she's floating through space, character, and it's like you have that gravity defying setting. The first thing I thought about was like the first Dead Space, where you're like shooting off the ships and like bouncing each in like stasis. I wanted to ask you, how do you feel about that? Because like one of the key weaknesses for Telltale for me in the episodic genre was gameplay. It became really repetitive. It was quite boring as well at certain times. I'm an episodic connoisseur. I played a lot of episodic games back in the day. And no, because I think an underrated one, if you haven't played it, it's called The Council. Have you played it?
No, I've always seen it though. It's a PlayStation exclusive, isn't it?
I think it might be on Steam now. Was it on Xbox?
The Council, yes.
Have a look on Wikipedia.
Yeah, I'm looking at it now.
Because my article's at the bottom of that Wikipedia page, if you want a bit of a...
The Council on Steam. Oh my God. It's... Yeah, I that's why I've heard of it, because it's composed by one of my favorite composers of all time, Olivier Devrier. If I say his name wrong, I'm sorry. Please don't kill me. Yeah, no, that's why I know of it. Have you got a Wikipedia page there? Yeah. Oh, it's on Xbox One. I'm stupid. I keep looking. I keep wanting to play it. Anyway,
scroll to the bottom of that Wikipedia page.
Yes. Okay.
You see the references.
Look at you.
Look at me.
Adnan Riaz, the review of The Council. No, I definitely wanted to play it. I keep seeing it, and I'm just like, oh man, because it is composed by Olivier. So yeah, I'm definitely going to play it.
So I would 100% recommend. Actually, I'm going to keep that for Spread the Arts. Actually, it's been a while since I played The Council, but I'll explain a bit more about it there. I think even you will be sold on it as well, but we'll come on to that. Remind me if I forget.
I mean, Olivier is composing it, so of course I'm sold on it.
And also as well, I'm surprised you haven't played it, because I think like you'd absolutely. But again, I'll come on to it. I'll explain it a bit more later on. But what I wanted to ask you was like, that was my kind of thing, and getting back on subject was that I always felt that there was a big weakness with Telltale games, like especially with the gameplay mechanics. Like at least with Life is Strange 1, the rewind mechanic changes everything. Like, Life is Strange 2, there's kind of like still a different kind of like, they kind of put you in situations where they want you to do things, and a little bit more kind of like puzzle intrinsic at times. But I never felt that with Telltale games. Sometimes it might have I can't remember if the Telltale game had a puzzle. I played so many of them, but they didn't really have like a huge amount of like, problem solving, or kind of like, I think maybe The Wolf Among Us did with the mirror in
Kind of.
It wasn't really huge. But basically, what I'm saying is like, how do you feel about the kind of evolution of this? Because I think the expectation, as I said, it's 2022 now. There's no knock on Telltale because I do really like Telltale. Still love Telltale. I buy their games and stuff. But how important is gameplay mechanics now? I feel like they really have to elevate, and especially with like obviously having so much fun with this zero G frost kind of ability they can use.
I think gameplay in games like this, I think it is an icing on the cake, if you will. I don't think a lot of people go into Telltale games expecting fantastic gameplay.
Yeah,
I think they more expect like, how are the choices? How's the dynamic? But if we put in fantastic gameplay, like it seems like their vision is on, I think that puts the icing on the cake. You know, you're not there for the action; you're there for the consequences. But I think it is like important in a way of like keeping you in the game, and also at the same time keeping you replaying it, because not only do you have choices involved, but that action will probably give you another choice. So the fact that you did this action in a certain step, this certain gameplay action, that might lead to another decision. I think that's kind of how Quantic Dream did with Detroit Become Human. Like you did a certain action in the gameplay, and it caused a ripple effect kind of deal.
Yeah.
If I remember correctly. But yeah, it seems like they're taking a lot of vision from Quantic Dream in that way, where it is both gameplay and the decisions involved.
Yeah, I would fully agree with that. I think like I'm not expecting a open world game on the same vein as like Spider-Man or something like that. I'm just expecting
I don't want it to be open world.
No, I wouldn't either, because I feel like obviously the fixed settings of like a Telltale game where it like, takes you into a new scene, you're loading up, you can do like a little bit of searching. A lot of it with Telltale, it became like, oh, I'm searching this room, I picked up 5 objects, looked at them, done this, and then kind of like gone to where the key trigger point is for the next scene, rather than having those kind of scenes with like Life is Strange 1, for example, where it's like you do the entire puzzle segment where it's like, let's find all the bottles. It's a bit of a kind of like scavenger quest. And you also have, here's the board, let's deduct what happened to Rachel Amber. And it's like other games like that, like that's where they were kind of like evolving it a bit. It was like, let's do other little things. It's not just necessarily like point A to point B with no kind of like, well, no, point A to point C, and then like, you know, there's no B, there's no purpose there. So I think like that's where I want them to kind of evolve it a bit more. And I do want to see, obviously I'd love to see the traditional core elements of a Telltale game where they're still there, but then I want involvement. I want a kind of a bit more immersiveness with my gameplay. I'm kind of doing things a bit more that kind of keep me, that reflects 2022 as well. As I said, Telltale needs to become Telltale 2022. It needs to be a company that's now for the present, because like that was its Achilles heel many years ago. It was just doing this. Every game felt the same at one point. You could play The Walking Dead, Batman, they were all in the same thing, ran on the same engine, ran on the same kind of formula, ran on this. And it was like, it tires you out, because people basically get to the point where you can have iterations of an iPhone, but eventually people are like, well, you know, maybe there's going to have to be the next, you know, something's going to have to give. Oh, there's about 14 of them now. It's very soon to be. But, you know, something's got to give at some point, and you kind of like looking for the next step. And I think that's with Telltale. I want to see the next step where it's like a gameplay enhancement, which kind of overall enhances the story that they're trying to do.
Yes. And I want to apologize for video watchers that I spilled like water on myself. So apologies there. But no, I think it does explore a lot into what the game could be. And I think it will just, no pun intended, but now pun intended here, it will expand what you play out the game. So I think it's a good move on them, because like you said, it's 2022. We expect more, I guess, and that's both good and bad. What our expectations are out of video games, but it is what it is, and I think it's a good decision on their part.
Oh, absolutely. And I think don't worry about spilling your drinks. I think I did that in the Anastasia video. I felt quite embarrassed. Yeah, for sure I spilled a drink at some point. And also that's a very fitting way to end this point with that great pun. So as I said, that's our only news segment. I'm going to go straight into our main topic. This was one that I wanted to explore very many months ago. It got shelved again. It was after we played Before the Storm Remastered. And I kind of wanted to explore the kind of like idea, is Before the Storm Remastered underappreciated? Is it looked down upon too much? Because I think like this is one of the more interesting entries now, because obviously the more the series continues to go on, we kind of have like different perceptions of how people feel towards it. And this one is very polarizing, in my opinion. I feel like maybe not as polarizing as 2. Maybe not as polarizing as 2.
Not as polarizing, but still
polarizing. I think it's like a very interesting entry. I think, like you said to me, it's your favorite.
It is.
Yeah, and which surprised me in itself, but also doesn't surprise me because, like I said, I have a lot of great things with BTS. I have certain problems with it, but a lot of people did come on and like excuse my language, like a shit ton of bricks. And I was never kind of like sure about that because let me kind of address this and I'll kick things off, which is that I think it's great. I think it's one of the stronger entries behind it. I think it's probably in my scale the 3rd favorite out of the 4 that I've played. Could have been second, but as I said, there's certain things with it. I think like I'm not necessarily someone who's that. As I said, I'm not the hugest Life is Strange fan. I always said that people are more into it than the fandom than I am. I've just run the channel and talk about it, and I love interviewing people and talking about that stuff. And I've always had an interest with the series, but I'm not that worried about someone like making, just off the top of my head, like hypothetically speaking, like Victoria left-handed instead of right-handed. I remember like at one point, I think because the expectation came on Deck 9 because there was a new studio coming in to just work on this project whilst Life is Strange 2 was done and capitalizing the first Life is Strange. I saw like a lot of people get really a little bit, they kind of was like, they're not respecting the franchise, they're not respecting what Don't Nod built, they don't respect this and that, like just like over minute details. And I'm pretty sure like Chris Floyd and Webb Pickers are both co-directors on Before Storm. Chris Floyd has since moved on from Deck 9. Webb is obviously the performance director on True Colors, still at Deck 9. I thought they handled things really well. Like they very much admit like they even went to like the Life is Strange wiki and looked at certain details of like characters. Cause it's like developers don't remember all the details of characters. The fandom helps them amplify like things that could easily be forgotten. But they were basically dealt with the Don't Know characters. Like here's the Don't Know characters. Let's deal with the story this kind of way. We're going down this route. We're going to take this character and this character. I think like what they did was really quite nice and handle the franchise really well at that point. And I think like I really enjoyed the fact that obviously, as I said, like Rachel Amber is my favorite character.
I want to ask you a follow-up question to that.
Ooh, here we go.
What are your thoughts on Metal Gear Survive?
Horrible, horrific. Don't talk about that game.
Why is that?
Because that is basically Konami capitalizing on Metal Gear Solid 5. It's the exact same game, but just turned into a multiplayer online game. And it's just like that. I'm not forgiving that. Not a chance. That's just like, that is a cash grab in every sense of the word. Like if you I played it as well, it's a cash grab. It's basically the same mechanics, same game, just reskinned in a different kind of way to kind of like sell on, get a bit of money. Why'd you ask?
I think when you're very passionate about a certain franchise, once it like gets passed on or it seems like it comes out too soon or there's not something that you really agree with in a certain sense, if you're already passionate about like the already franchise that you love and anything like bad comes out of it, right? You are completely just like unforgiving of it. You will never see like the good light out of it. It's a lot of people why The Last Jedi didn't win over a lot of people. It's the reason why you don't like Metal Gear Solid as much as you do.
But okay, and that's very nice little curveball you throw me there. Just like I'm gonna like explain why other people might be annoyed. The difference is though, BTS isn't bad. The Last Jedi is horrific in itself because, like as I said before, the 3 films that follow Star Wars Episode 6 didn't need to exist. There's a reason for this. Is my counter argument on it. So basically, both in the cases of Star Wars and Metal Gear, the story was finished.
Yeah,
the creators have finished the game, but there's a timeline there for me done on both those.
Couldn't you say that the Life is Strange, the first game, that was a finished game right there?
This is a prequel.
Yeah, exactly. Like I
hate
the idea of prequels, and I know we just talked about a game that is a prequel to The Expanse. I understand that, but the idea of a prequel is like, oh well, the story's finished, but what happened before? It's kind of like, yeah.
But to counter argument that Metal Gear Solid 1, Metal Gear Solid 2, Metal Gear Solid 3 is a prequel. Metal Gear Solid 4 continues the main line. Metal Gear Solid 5 goes full as back in time again. Peace Walker's back in time. It continuously jumps the timeline at that point. And am I not wrong to say that Halo has done it before as well, where it's gone into prequel territory whilst
only with Reach, and that's it.
Yeah, but you always have to have a
Reach
prequel.
was one of the greatest Halos of all time. Yeah. Which
Yeah.
actually, Master Chief, let's go. Bang. But Halo Reach was top three. I'm not gonna say it's my favorite because I know there's a lot of Halo people who are like, "Oh, Halo 3, blah, blah, blah." Halo Reach is top. Get out of my face. But I think it gets a lot of disrespect at the same time. Not as much as ODST. ODST gets.
I liked ODST.
Yes. And ODST wasn't necessarily a prequel, but it did jump in the timeline, blah, blah, blah. Halo Wars was also a prequel. So it does jump around in the timeline a lot. Halo Wars, the first one does. Halo Wars, I believe, is a prequel. And then Halo Wars 2 is after Halo 5 or 4. I can't remember which one. But going back to Before the Storm, though, I think there's a lot of underrating this thing, not because of the prequel dynamic. And I think there's a lot of people who wanted to know more about Chloe. They definitely did. But I think they were upset because they didn't want the before, they wanted the after. You know, they it was in the wrong place at the wrong time. So not only was it off to a new developer, but it was in a time frame where they didn't really care. They cared in a way of just like, yeah, what is Chloe's deal? But like with that ending of Life is Strange 1, we wanted to continue. Like, well, what's happening now? It's like, well, let's talk about.
Let me play devil's advocate.
Yeah.
You just did it to me before. That's a very interesting point as well, because that's what I'm going to play on. If I had come up to you and you were Deck 9, and I was like, Adam, make the story as a continuation instead of a prequel, then
Bro, I tell you all the time.
Would
That's
you not
why
expect
I defend
the fandom's reputation, or like someone's kind of thing like, ooh.
That's
I
what I
would
mean.
Personally.
No, that's what I mean about
hell.
Last Jedi, though. Last Jedi. That's why I defend it so hard, because he's like, hey, Rian Johnson, you need to continue J.J. Abrams' story. I will defend Rian Johnson for the rest of my days. Like, that's why I hated people hated Last Jedi so much, because it was set up to fail. Like it was created to fail.
Back on Life is Strange.
Yes.
I think like that's my kind of counter argument. So as I said, I'm not that worried about the little details. I'm not bogged down in them. So it's like if they change certain thing with a character, then fair enough. As I said, it's a different developer, and same thing with Metal Gear. I'll accept one day when they start making games about that without Kojima, it's going to have to happen, and certain things will be changed. So you have to kind of do it. And I think like what they handled well was good, and I think obviously it's the difference of where the story's positioned. We lose Max Caulfield, which is a big one of it. That is obviously a big kind of difference. And obviously, I think with BTS there are limitations, but there's no kind of like rewind mechanic. There's no kind of, it feels quite a little bit sometimes bare boned. At the same time, it isn't, because like, you know, the back talk mechanic's cool. I love the idea that they had for like Chris Floyd and Webb, but I think like I think it's just not as poignant as the rewind mechanic. So I think like you do struggle with it in that sense. But I think like where the story is positioned is interesting to sit where it was, with like Chloe being the main character. I think obviously Chloe was someone who stood out really a bit more, and I think was a bit more, you know, a bit more, I think even in sense a bit more marketable than Max. Like, you know, she's very much like, you know, she came out very strong in the game at that point, like with Chloe.
I agree with that.
After the first game. So I think like it was kind of good positioning that. Obviously they had like an opportunity with Rachel Amber, Deck 9 to create that, and I think like they nailed that. That was a 10 out of 10 for me. I don't even try and comment on this video saying that it's not 10 out of 10. That was for me a great character, really well written. Was a great character kind of being brought to life after we didn't even see her in the first game, just saw pictures. We saw kind of like the fact that she was part of the story. Phenomenal casting, unbelievable. No one else will ever play her in the same kind of vein. That's just one of those one-of-a-kind roles. Same way as Max as well for Hannah. So I think like that was nailed for that. So I think like they had a really interesting dynamic with that, with Chloe and Rachel, and I think it worked well. My problems that started to manifest with BTS, and again, I love it. For example, The Tempest is one of my favorite scenes in the entire game.
Yes.
A standout scene. Stands out in the entire series. One of the greatest scenes that was in the entire franchise. But what started to hit with me with BTS was, and I kind of picked this with Webb when I was on his stream, was that BTS had a really interesting intrigue of the first Life is Strange at first, where it's like, oh, they could be doing something here. They were telling us stuff about Rachel we didn't know. It's like, does she have powers? Does she not? It's like, oh, and it kind of like that story falls off a little bit after the first episode. It's like, we're not going to go down that route. And then I'm a bit like, I feel like I've been, maybe my own expectations have misled me here. It's kind of like not, for that not to be kind of the core theme of it. But then in itself, we're going through the story. It's 3 episodes. And in my mind, having played episodic games, no episodic game has ever worked 3 episodes. Michonne wasn't God. I found that really boring as a Walking Dead intro. This is the other one that kind of stands out. They're 2 mainstream ones I stay with. Tell me why that's a bit of a different story.
The last episode rushed itself. It really did. The last episode, it had too much going on by the last episode. Tell me why.
Yeah, enjoyable game. Same way as BTS and Michonne. I think Michonne's below them for me, and Tell Me Why and Before the Storm are above it. But like as you said, I think like the structure when we were talking about it maybe 2 episodes ago, when we were talking about Square Enix abandoning the old episodic format. Like look at the episodes where it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and we were talking about like Life is Strange. The way it's structured, there's always like it's constantly, it just sets itself up so well. It was like so consistently flowing throughout the entire thing. Even Life is Strange 2, I felt was like that as well. Consistently set itself up quite nicely, nice routine. 1 to 3 seems like it rushes quite a lot of the story of like Before the Storm. Like there's so many storylines that going on, like with Nathan Prescott in the background, this character in the background, this one, even Rachel and Chloe's relationship doesn't feel fleshed out. And as I said before, I would have liked, and I think this is where you might have got more of a fan backlash if you'd done something like this, but I would have revised parts of the Don't Nod, what Don't Nod didn't tell us about Life is Strange, where it's like now we have a bit more play, bit more territory to play around with. And I would have liked to have done a episode which kind of centers a bit more on Rachel and Frank and builds out a bit more. But I also wanted to do it in a way where I wanted to do that kind of thing where my twist would have been that the fact that what you believe in the first Life is Strange with Rachel and Frank's relationship isn't what it seems to be. That Chloe later learns this kind of like relationship that Frank had with Rachel, but Rachel isn't this promiscuous kind of woman that you think she is. It's just built on maybe Frank's connection to Rachel's biological mother. Maybe it's Frank had strong feelings for her and then she didn't feel the same way. Maybe Rachel just, nothing really happened there. So it kind of builds that perception of who Rachel Amber is, that kind of the girl next door, the Mary Jane Watson kind of character sometimes, but then also kind of like shrouded enigma, a bit manipulative, maybe this kind of thing. But she's none of that. It's just that basically she's just constantly like throwing you for a curve. So I feel like there were opportunities to do that, I think, with Before the Storm. Got a couple more points, but
go for it. No, I'm just on the roll.
I'm throwing like all kinds of stuff. So those are kind of like the other issues I had with it. And I feel like in itself, Deck 9 did really well to kind of work things into itself. It created some of its own original characters, which obviously has an affinity with. I like Mikey North. I like Steph. Obviously, Steph has been a huge success for them. Other characters. I think Samantha was needed a bit more substance to her. Needed more substance to her.
Samantha and Chloe's little like stalker guy. What was his name again?
He's creepy.
Again, like one of the most forgettable characters in any video game.
What's his name? It's back to me now. Oh god.
Yeah, that's what I mean, though. Like, I can't even recall his name, but I've played Before the Storm many times.
I don't know why Ethan is stuck on my head, but
no, it's not Ethan. Definitely not Ethan. So I'm looking up the cast, right? I have to Google the cast. And that's the thing. It's just kind of like, wow, really? I can't even find it. But yeah, no, he's just like a very forgettable character in that way of just kind of like, he's so creepy and he's such a stalker and it's just like kind of a throwaway character. Samantha, like I knew right away, like who you're talking about because like, she does play a pretty big role. David Madsen. I keep forgetting David in this. Why?
I think I found it. No.
So yeah, Drew, Mikey, they're all great characters. Evan. No. Evan's different. I am completely lost now.
I feel awful about this. I might have to delete it from the episode. Who is it?
Wait.
Oh my god.
It's not even a full cast of. Wait. Elliot. It's Elliot.
Elliot. I knew it was an E. That's why I said Ethan. Oh, Elliot. That's the one.
But like even on IMDb, it's not even on the top casts. It's not even. Oh no, it is. It's right there. I'm stupid. But yeah, Elliot. but yeah, no. Like Elliot is kind of a throwaway character. Samantha, it's a kind of a throwaway character. Steph and Mikey, they were like out of the blue, like they were great characters, and of course they let on a lot, but like, you know, there wasn't a lot of fleshing out of who they were. There was it's a problem that a lot of story writers have, that like they want to throw out as many characters as possible, right? Like maybe make some new characters, but in the end of the day, you know, like if you don't have a purpose for that character, then it's just kind of wasted potential there. Again, like I'm gonna bring it back. I want to add a third character into the Essence of Life, but I knew that if I wrote in a third character, you know, it would kind of get lost into the scene. Like 2 characters was enough for me, and I was like, nope, like this is what it is. It's a short album anyway, so adding a third character is just going to be like a whole big mess. And my point in saying this is that, like, if you add too many characters, or too many characters you forget about. It's the same problem as why I don't like Game of Thrones. There's too many characters. God. There's too many. You're throwing spaghetti at the wall and seeing what sticks. I'm sorry, Game of Thrones fans. Do you watch the new series? I don't care.
They kill off the most interesting ones as well.
What's that?
They kill off the most interesting ones as well.
Yeah, they do. Like it's honestly like it's too many characters, and they don't know how to flesh out the already existing characters. Yeah. I love Lena Headey. I love her.
Yeah.
But it's I don't know. That's just me. Like as an amateur writer, like you might listen to the Essence of Life, like, oh, this is a stupid story. I'm like, yeah, I'm an amateur, but these are people who are paid. I don't know. I don't want to like knock anybody for what their writing skills are, because I am an amateur. But at the same time, it's just I don't know. Like, and that's the thing. Like, I wish we got more of Samantha. I wish we did, because she was really helping out Nathan, and I don't think we got enough of her. You know?
Yeah, she was really interesting. She could have been interesting more. I think, like as I said, the position of the story, she just kind of like is there. She's just there in the story, and sometimes it feels like she's just kind of like a cheerleader sometimes for like Nathan, but it doesn't really add more substantial kind of content to it. And I think like with Nathan, there was more room to expand that story a bit more. And I think kind of like I just felt like it feels like some of the connections, and I think in the 3 episodes didn't come together in terms of like the Victoria chase not liking Rachel as much. Obviously it sets itself up in time, but I feel like there should have been a more deeper hatred or something being built in there for me, like kind of showing it. And I think same with like other relationships. I think like we're obviously like Nathan with Rachel. I think like there was still some, I feel like because you take Rachel Amber as a main character at this point. Rachel Amber is as popular as she is now because of Deck Nine's help as well, because like people saw her as a character. Kylie was there doing the performance. She's the main character in this 3-episode prequel, so I think it amplified her position in the story. Obviously at that point, as you said, now you have a power dynamic where it's Rachel, Max and Chloe. That's where the difficult story would start, like you said in the album. Like you have to cut something from there, because then it's difficult.
Yeah,
and I think like that's for me, no matter what other people think, I think Vicelli does a really good job with the comic series. I mean, Vicelli, she does a very interesting dynamic there, and I think it did seem to, I think my personal assumption is it came down from Square Enix in that position to have the 3 character dynamic in the comics, but you have to work with what you got, and it's interesting to see how it's positioned and how it positions characters. But I think like there was that issue with BTS that I had, where it's like it should have had 5 episodes if they were going to commit to it being a prequel. I know obviously then it makes it kind of fully fledged and stuff, but I think 5 episodes would have been more than enough at that point to kind of like really unload a lot of the scenes, create really kind of like, you know, to tie up some loose threads and even throw people into kind of like a different direction of like, you know, I think like in itself, and just based off what I can remember, there should have been a bit more kind of like poignant scene where, for example, and this is me rewriting stuff, but having a scene where Chloe tells Rachel about Max. And I kind of get this perception sometimes from the fandom where they think like Deck Nine did Max dirty, did her dirty. And I think like said people have said that. And I think in the first Life After Strange episode with Hannah, when me and Hannah spoke for the first time in like 5 years, she even said like, you know, she didn't really follow BTS all the way through because she was very concerned with how, from what other people had said to her about how Deck Nine had portrayed Max. I think like that's again something that should have been explored a bit more, because I think like the entire point with those 3 characters, my own perception is that they are all very dramatic teenagers and all have traits that each person doesn't like and how each person perceives them. That's why I think in the last couple of StrangeCast, Life After Strange episodes, I've explored toxicity with Rachel Amber, because it's a very interesting word to throw around, toxicity or toxic, because who isn't toxic in their life, or what is toxic in your definition? People have their own shit, man. There are teenage girls, teenage boys in the show as well, in the game. Like, people have their own issues, so they have their own kind of things. That's why I always felt with Chloe Price in the first Life is Strange game, when people were like, oh, she's just like this towards Max. Well, I was like, maybe you should lose your dad at 5 years old, or 8 years old, however young you are, and then then see your best friend leave as well at the same time, and then see how fucked up you end up as well. That's not a binary position, but that's going to happen with someone. So I think like it gave a greater understanding from Chloe's perspective. I think like one of the things that I found really hard to swallow was the SAG strike that happened with this, because obviously we lost a lot of the actors. Some of them were really great that came in as replacements. I take nothing away from them, and they had to obviously replace a lot of them for it. Obviously, I think the big one was Ashley Birch moving on and moving into a writing role with Deck Nine to kind of help this project. Mm-hmm. I like Rihanna DeVries's Chloe Price, and I think it works for a prequel kind of thing. But for me, that is difficult to replace Chloe Price as Ashley Birch, because I think like that Ashley Birch as Chloe Price there would have been really interesting to explore a lot more as well. And I say that in the sense that we have a recasting in terms of William Price, so Joe Ockman's not doing the voice for it. And when you watch Joe Ockman in the first Life is Strange, he delivers probably a unbelievable performance for me in my eyes. Yeah, I think he's so good with it, and I think like that, and I think everyone we spoke in Life After Strange afterwards, he's like, I was like heartbroken not be able to play William Price again, because it's such a soothing kind of role, and this one it has this is where we see Chloe and William's relationship even more kind of pungent post his death. So I think like we missed some of the key scenes with the actors that weren't there. I think like other ones did step into it. I think like obviously Caleb was good casting in place of Nick Schreiner because of the SAG strike. And then obviously I think like in itself, we probably did see some characters omitted at certain points. I think that maybe they did keep out Day's character for other reasons. Maybe they were like, we want to keep Kate out of the story and kind of like not necessarily recast. I think obviously that in itself probably caused a bit of friction with the fandom, where it's like people like, we don't want this person to be recast.
Try recasting Kate and see what happens. It's like, it's not going to go well.
Try recasting Max. Imagine if they would have done someone else for Max instead of Thingy, because like that in itself was because like that in itself was, I think we'll come on to Farewell in itself in a little bit, but I think like that was something that caused another kind of issue with like kind of the way people perceive BTS, because it's like you have all these different actors. And again, as I said, I like Rihanna DeVries. I like Rihanna DeVries' Chloe Price as well. I thought Rihanna stepping up really delivered in the absence of Ashley Birch because of the SAG strikes. But I think like that just was something that did kind of like cause a bit of a, if you replace any voice actor in a series, it's going to be like, eyebrows erased. Futurama tried to do it with Bender. It's like, no, people aren't going to have that. You got there's a line to be crossed. So as I said, there was kind of like problems and inconsistencies with BTS, and not necessarily like bad ones that overshadowed the overall experience. I really enjoyed it. I really enjoyed the backtalk mechanic. I do exasperate what Square Enix's influence was on this. I feel like Square does have a lot of control as a publisher. I'm Infinity's with Square, but I'm kind of just giving my own perception of it. I feel like there were some executive decisions done for the way the story goes. And obviously in hindsight, seeing how the comics have developed, how Life is Strange 1 has come about, how Life is Strange True Colors came about, how the Performance Song came about, I feel like there are some executive decisions that came about. My major kind of like one beef I really have with BTS, and this is the standout for me.
Here we go.
Is the ending. I don't like the ending of BTS because it comes across, maybe it's trying to be very Empire Strikes Back, you kind of like a bit of a gloom kind of like ending towards it, and it just doesn't balance right. They have that really interesting montage, and then it cuts to the dark room. Imagine if you haven't played this game yet. If you haven't played I'm spoiling. It's Life is Strange. You need we don't do spoilers on. You don't do spoiler segments on it. That I just felt like, was it necessary? Like, was it necessary? Like, there was no build up to it. It just kind of felt like, because it was doing all these other scenes, and obviously it does that, but then it kind of goes to it. And it's just like, it doesn't really give you much about it. I feel like that was where, for me, and it summed up my kind of position on the 3 episodes, because there's 5 episodes there. I feel like you should have seen something a bit more. I personally, going to be that guy. My preferred setting, if you were going to try to do something, was that to do all the montage scenes and stuff like that. And then it cuts away to Blackwell, for example, and you see Chloe walking around with a flyer. So we fast forward the timeline up to the present day. And then I wouldn't even mind, like, you know, if there was a bit of a cameo of like Chloe walking around with the flyers and stuff, and you see Max driving in the background, like June with her mom, returning to Arcadia Bay, kind of gives you a bit more of a kind of like, we're connecting the timeline very close here. And then if in itself, like, you know, Chloe's venting, frustrated, and then she walks up the stairs of Blackwell, and obviously she's been expelled, but like, you know, she walks up the stairs of Blackwell, she's putting up these flyers so you see them, kind of relates to where we're at in the timeline. And then she bumps into a figure, drops all the flyers, and then you kind of like see this, you just see like, you know, the bottom half of this guy down, standing in front of her, picks up a flyer, she picks up all the flyers, and she's like, oh, sorry, whatever. And he like kind of speaks to her briefly and says, oh, you know, is this the missing girl, Rachel Amber, blah, blah, whatever. And then she's like, yeah. And then she have a brief little exchange. Then she walks away, and then the camera pans up and shows its face, and it's Jefferson. And he's like looking at the flyer of Rachel. That would have been, and maybe that's like shit writing. That's different. Me trying to be like smart ass, whatever else. That would have set it up a bit more for me. Because then it's like, oh shit, Jefferson is in the game. It's like they kept him right to the end as this kind of like, you know, he's there, he's here, he's in Arcadia Bay, it's happened. It's like, it doesn't go into the, I think the dark room kind of thing was just because it was the way it was done. It was like this really lovely montage, and then it happens, we see the dark room stuff, and the kind of the tone and the balance changes. Obviously, again, we know what happens to her, but I feel like it just would have added a bit more. Like, if you had that scene, as I said, and you expanded it a bit more that I created, maybe you had Nathan Prescott walking around a bit more, kind of like sees Chloe, looks away, doesn't like want to look at her, kind of like feeling a bit more mischievous. I think it would have just built a bit more towards that ending. I just think like getting to it, I was kind of a bit like, I was like, maybe I'm obviously I'm meant to feel uncomfortable, but I felt a little bit too like, I don't think this should have been the way you maybe necessarily ended it. I think like it was just because it went through a different tone. I was like, I wanted the setup to be a bit more. I would have like literally like dropped my controller and like lost my shit if I'd seen Jefferson like just standing there with that flyer and stuff. It would have been sinister. It would have been like, it would have lapped into the first Life is Strange, because we see those flyers everywhere in the first Life is Strange. And to just like pick one, he's picking one up, he like bumps into Chloe, and then that interaction, obviously she interacts with him in the first Life is Strange, but it would have, I think it would just added for me a very sinister undertone for like the fact that he's like, you know, he's like,
yeah, no, like I would have written it differently, but that's not my point here. But but like here's the main problem. I think it is due to, I think most of the problems that a lot of people have with this game is that it comes down to, it's only 3 episodes. There's a lot of things that's not fleshed out. And the unfortunate side is that montage at the very end, right? After you give the decision, right? In the hospital, and then it goes through an entire montage of Chloe dyeing her hair blue and getting tattoos and the dark room, all this stuff. I think that could have been an episode. It could have been a playable episode. It really could have.
Yeah.
And I think the problem is that it was too far from the begin, like it was too far away from the beginning of Life is Strange 1. It was too far away from that timeline that they had to fast forward. So I think that in a lot of ways, right, a prequel needs to, the main job for a prequel is not to be like, oh, let's explore this dynamic. It's supposed to be, let's explain all the questions that came out of the first game. Like, it needs to be the answer to the questions. Your point on whether or not like it should have been Rachel and Frank, right? That's a question that should have been answered in the prequel. You know, like how did they get together? Like, yeah, they bumped into each other in a club, right? But where did that dynamic kind of come from, right? There could have been an alluding to like, listen, like, how's Rachel doing? You know, like kind of like asking like, where's Rachel at? You know, or Rachel's missing, you know, and all this stuff. And that's what I mean, though. There could have been answers that, like, there could have been answers to questions. From my opinion, I think it set up more questions than it did answer them. And I think it was a good story, like a good standalone story. But I think Farewell answered more questions than the entire 3 episodes did about the first game. And that's the unfortunate side, that a bonus episode answered more questions than the actual dynamic did. We just got introduced to Rachel, which, you know, Kylie, you know, you did great as Rachel, you know, just to say that. I don't know. I think it did less answering than it did than it should have. You know what I mean? But the other side is that it was a whole different team. It was a whole different team. It was a whole different studio. It was a different dynamic. And I don't think people were ready for that. I think they were ready for the next game coming out of, Luke and Michelle. But it wasn't. And I think people were disappointed by that. And that it had a different vision. And there was no answers to questions. There was a whole mess of like reasons why this is an underappreciated game. And it kind of sucks in that way. I wish it did, but I think, like you said, there's a lot of problems already set up that it's already in the studio. Like what you brought up, the SAG drama going around, so they couldn't like get in these casts. I think it could have been a better game, but there was just too much set up for it that it for a lot of people it was set up for failure. Yeah, I loved it. It's my favorite, but a lot of people disagree with that for good reason. Because
all the other stuff that I said sounds like it's a bit negative. But as I said, I really like BTS. I really do. I think it's criminally underappreciated. That's why I brought up those factors, because those factors limit it from being in the same vein as even the first Life is Strange. Because one, the soundtrack is phenomenal. Like Jonathan Morelli did the first Life is Strange. Yeah, Jonathan Morelli did the first Life is Strange soundtrack, and obviously the tracks are iconic on that. Then they bring in Daughter to do it. Daughter's music is unbelievable. It's so good. Yes. Even the soundtrack is great. I think we'll talk about it in a future episode. We'll definitely the soundtracks and music and stuff like that. But that is just like an unbelievable, we're carrying on the theme of the essence of Life is Strange. And as I said, I don't think I've ever met anyone who doesn't like Daughter's music for BTS. And I became a Daughter fan because of BTS. I've listened to all their music because of that. So that is in itself phenomenal. The scenes are really great. As I said, The Tempest is such an original, great idea. Tabletop is a really fun idea and a really, really original kind of idea. And then on top of that, where was I going with this now? I was getting my zone then, and I just lost it. Just lost my mojo. No, but then on top of that, scenes I'm talking about, Rachel Amber, iconic. I felt like every moment I spent with her was exactly the character that I built in my head from the first Life is Strange. And she really encapsulated that. Great writing, great performance, great kind of things. I love the way that they positioned her. Like very early on in the first episode, you see those kind of moments where she goes into one of my favorite scenes where she's in the classroom with Chloe and with Mr. Keaton. She's like, Mr. Keaton, look at my outfit. And then she twirls around and she's like, Rachel looks unbelievable. And she twirls around and she does iconic wink. And that is for me, I was like, that is Rachel Amber summed up. And then obviously again, Two Truths and a Lie, she's great in that. One of my favorite scenes with Kylie is where she's in where she's lying on the floor and she's like, she needs mouth-to-mouth resuscitation. She's like, no. It's just
fucking great.
It's great. And I think it's really great on top of that. So as I said, I think it's really great, and I think it could have been unbelievably great as well had they done 5 episodes, structured out certain segments that felt like out of place, kind of like really, and I'd say 5 episodes structured out in 5 episodes. We have 4th one with Farewell. I feel like that was a kind of a different animal in itself that was made, but I really enjoyed BTS in so many ways. I think Webb did a really great job with it. Chris Ploy did a really great job with it. The casting was great. It set up careers. Katie's, for example, with that. And obviously as well, if you follow me on Twitter, me and Katie recently linked up. So I do hope you're looking forward to that. And I'm sure we'll have her on here at some point for definitely talk more about everything that's happened since, BTS and whatnot. But I just really enjoyed that. And it's kind of move on as well into Farewell. Farewell in itself was a different animal because that was a really, that was your dessert, wasn't it? And I think it was a really great appetizing dessert. Because however you felt about BTS, I feel like everyone was really happy with Farewell. Because I think obviously, aside from the fact that we have Max is back, we have obviously Chloe's back, and more in the sense the voice actors, Ashley Birch and Hannah Teller back. We even had Joe come back as well to do very brief cameos, William Price. But I feel like that was the perfect. I feel like if you weren't happy with the ending, for example, as I was with BTS, where I feel like that was just kind of left me with a sour taste. After I played Farewell, I was like, I can take that as the ending. If we kind of set everything up, it kind of took you really into that flashback scene in the first Life is Strange, where you go back in time and you start kind of seeing into the house of it, and you basically wanted that. If you just wanted that extra content of you being these 2 kids, you're living the life, you're seeing the day in the life of Max and Chloe of at that point in their life. I really enjoyed it. I have nothing bad to say about Farewell. I think it was as I said, it was just a really great supplement to what we had actually experienced with BTS.
Yeah, and I think it was exactly what we were looking for in a Before the Storm game. But again, that's when we could get back to voice actors. That's when we could get back to what Life is Strange was. And I think that it was just in the wrong place at the wrong time. And I think Farewell kind of set it up for success again. It's just unfortunate that it came out in that time with a different studio. There's just some things that I think people should accept what it was and just, appreciate for what it is, But
yeah, and I understand it. Like, I know that people have a strong affinity with Donut. I really have a strong affinity with them. Like, and I admire them so much. Like, as I said, I've known Luke for about 9 years. No, not 9 years.
Yeah.
9 years. It's 7 years. And do you know the funny part is we've known each other for 7 years, like followed on Twitter and felt that, but never spoken in person. There've been opportunities, but have been missed because of like certain things that happen in schedule. Never happened. Admired Michelle 7 years. I've always said, like, if I had the opportunity to work for like a developer or like in the same vein, it would be either like Kojima or Michelle. Like, those are two. I would jump at an opportunity if any of those two came up for me. Which my DMs are open. But like, as I said, like I admire them. I admire like Donut. I really admire their team, not just like Luke and Michelle, but Raoul Barbet, the art team, everything else. I admire what they did with Life is Strange 1. And obviously in itself, it's going to give Deck 9 a hard time dealing with Life is Strange before some. They were a very different studio coming from very humble beginnings. If anything, they've been dealt with this kind of like big property, which is now becoming a franchise for Square Enix. They obviously want to capitalize on it from Square's perspective, and it did leave them with a tough cut. And as I feel for Webb and Chris, they did a really great job with what they were dealt with. Like, and I've always said again, like, don't just hate on Deck 9 because you think they did it. There are always corporate overlords in any business. If you really like a studio, there's obviously a publisher at the helm of it. They might change something. They might not like something. Who knows? Like, we don't know the full insights of everything that's happened at these studios. We find out trickle down information later on. Sometimes we don't. So that's how I see it in that kind of thing. Can you criticize it? Of course you can. I think it does deserve criticizing at times. Same as the first Life is Strange. Technical limitations are enough to be criticized that in itself. And it was a bit disappointing. But what I felt with BTS and the way it was received, I wish, this is why I was disappointed a little bit with True Colors in the end, because it's like it borrowed too much from the first Life is Strange. I wish Square Enix had just basically been like, right, Don't Nod's not affiliated with the franchise anymore. We love Don't Nod. They did really great job for us. They did this, but we're going to take it into a new direction. This is Deck 9's stamp on it now, and put the authority on it and make it that, because it still feels like Deck 9 is kind of like trying to do its own thing, but then also kind of being put into the Don't Nod shadow sometimes of like, do this, do this, like follow the story themes of the first Life is Strange, follow this kind of idea, do a prequel to the first Life is Strange, but let them just do their thing as a studio. Let them just go and like, nail the game as it is and like just do their own kind of like style. And I think like that's the kind of, if I was planning Life is Strange for the future and like, to kind of do it, I would basically do Deck 9 as at the helm of it and do another studio that comes in with it. I would do it like almost 12 years ago, Call of Duty, World at War, and Call of Duty Modern Warfare. Activision has Infinity Ward working on the Modern Warfare brand. You have Treyarch working on the World at War Black Ops brand. That's for me it. Then you have two different games that are going to come out every different time, but that this developer's making this one, this developer's making this one, that that they have their stamp mark on this game and this one and this one in the franchise. And I think like that's what would deal with it better. But as I said, like I do really enjoy BTS. It's tied as one of my favorite Life is Strange's. Like when I say it's my third favorite, it's still tied. It can jump up and down because there's so many great factors with it. And there's so many great opportunities I had because of BTS as well, like meeting people and talking to people and whatnot. So I'm always appreciative of that, and I'm appreciative of what Deck 9 does with the franchise sometimes as well. Like, it's difficult. It's a difficult ask. Like it's always going to be difficult. I can't go and make a Crash Bandicoot game without ever being compared to what Naughty Dog did. I can't go and make a Horizon game without being compared to what Guerrilla did. It's always going to be that. Whoever makes the original property is always going to have that kind of signature. And the same with like the Lord of the Rings TV show for Amazon. It's always going to be compared to Peter Jackson's work. It's always going to be compared to Peter Jackson's films because that's what people are going to be. Or you're going to compare it to Tolkien's works from the books. It's just going to have that kind of like that fandom, and it's just part of the fandom's kind of like perception of things. But I've always kind of been very open to like changes and stuff, even if I don't like it. But it's just part of life, isn't it?
Oh yeah, no, but no, I fully agree with you, and I think that's a good way to end things. Yeah,
I do. I think so as well. Just over the hour mark, so I think we'll go into our segment, which is about the arts. We'll kick things off into that. Do you want to go first, or do you want me to go first?
I think I'll just go first because mine will take less explanation Yours sounds like it will. First of all, so again, I'm going to plug my album one more time. Is The Essence of Life. Thanks for everybody for getting back to me, giving me great feedback. You really like Sanctuary, so that's cool. Thanks for that. And you liked Eden, so thanks for that. I know this because I look at my analytics on Spotify. So thanks for liking Eden, because it's mostly Kylie Brown, like doing what Kylie Brown does best.
Yeah.
So yeah, thanks for that. I'm working on the full length album, probably 2 months from now. So that will come out late fall next year. So hopefully, if I don't go into a crazy stupor. But the Spread the Arts that I will do besides my album, the EP, is Odessa's. And Odessa is a electronic duo spelled Odessa. They came out with a new album, I believe last month, July, called The Last Goodbye. And I think it's really mellow. I think it's really poetic. If you're looking for a good like background trance kind of feel, very, very vibey kind of album, Odessa's The Last Goodbye, fantastic album. I've listened to it 15 times already, so you should check it out for yourself.
Very, very good shout there. So as you've alluded to before, I will suggest now The Council you should go and play.
Yes.
I haven't played this in 4 years, but I would recommend it. So this was in that twilight of like episodic games. We're talking about like, The Walking Dead, well, Telltale, it was 2018, but Telltale, Don't Nod, they were all kind of like capitalizing on. This was like, for me, a lot of people haven't played it. They've seen it, but they never played it. So this was made by a French studio. Yeah. Big Bad Wolf, which again, great name, and Focus Home Interactive published it. So it's 5 episodes. I got a review code for this game because I was covering it at the time. I was like, "Oh, it's popped up in the news releases and stuff. I'll cover it a bit." And I kind of got a bit invested in it. I was like, "Oh, let's get a code." So I reviewed all 5 episodes through their entirety. Got codes from Focus to do it, and I was genuinely surprised by how much I enjoyed this game. Like, so basically, let me start with there are technical limitations of the game when you play it. Like there's like a couple of bugs in it and stuff like that, and it just doesn't flow seamlessly, but it is, if you like Life is Strange, if you like Walking Dead, you will really enjoy this game, because this game really hits home, especially in the gameplay mechanics. So let me just read the second paragraph from Wikipedia, because I think this will kind of like sell it to you. So we'll kick things off with, obviously, it's set in 1793. The council follows a Frenchman named Louis Desrochers, who, in search of his recently missing mother, Sarah, the head of the French branch of a society known as the Golden Order, arrives on an elusive island near the coast of England where various influential political figures from Europe and United States are gathering for a mysterious purpose. The game combines fictional characters with real-life figures such as George Washington, Napoleon Bonaparte, and Manuel Godoy, all of whom appear as key characters, and also heavily features real-life paintings, books, sculptures as part of its setting and puzzles. The first release of French development studio Big Bad Wolf, a branch of Cyanide. It also incorporates RPG elements in the form of leveling and skill systems, which influence interactions with both environment and non-player characters. So this was a really interesting game. Obviously, Adam alluded to the composer as well, Olivier, who I didn't know, obviously, until, I just recently realized as well, and Sylviane Secchi, who I interviewed as well for an article at one point, and Fabrice Granger. Granger directed the game. So as I said, it's very interesting because it's got a skill tree system in it. So like, to give you a bit more insight, it has 3 classes, different sets. So you have diplomat, and they have skill sets of like equity, conviction, politics, diversion, and linguistics. You have the Oculus class, you have science, oculism, manipulation, duration, and subterfuge. That's my vocabulary.
Sure.
Subterfuge. So it's got like all those kind of like and final one, sorry, is detectives. You have questioning, vigilance, psychology, logic, and ability. These aren't just like, me throwing down different names and stuff. They actually play a part in the game. It's so interesting to see how it works. It's a proper RPG skill tree. You play those kind of games that you play, it's really quite refined. You have like a leveling system. You can improve this skill. And to kind of give you as well one more thing as well on this, like in the game, and also as well, let me kind of say the story is heavily inspired by the
Necronomicon.
Tough day.
Mm-hmm.
Now having a tough day with Necronomicon, it's heavily inspired by it plays a big part in the story. So obviously it's big H.P. Lovecraft vibe in there. So if you have that kind of thing, you taught me about vampires, kind of like aesthetic and stuff like that. I think you'll definitely dig it. But one more thing that's really interesting in this game, and I'm not going to spoil any of the story because, as I said, I think the intrigue in itself sets it up for me. When I was sold on that, I was like, "Ooh, this is interesting." I was like, "Oh, so George Washington's in the game, and this person's in the game. I'm in for this." So, in itself, choices have an impact on the story. They really do. Like they'll change the trajectory of the story. Like certain things will happen. I was like, remember playing through some of the scenes? I was like, "Huh." I was like, wait a minute, what? I was like, it was like genuinely one of those moments. That was thingy. And then one of the main mechanics in the game is called confrontation. So confrontations are basically like, the backtalk mechanic in Before the Storm. Imagine you were injecting a bit of steroids into that. It's like that. It's like proper, like intense. We're talking about, because this is where the RPG mechanics come into play. It's like all the things that you do in the game, different things you've been uncovering for clues, your skill set of like the class that you have, what choice you have. It is brutal because I remember playing because I was like, I don't want to mess up any of these. So it's pretty intense to set up, and it does it in really great moments. So as I said, technical limitations were a problem with it. I think the story kind of like lags on in the second part of it and it doesn't finish on the higher note that I think it could have done. But the actual setup of it is like so cool, and it's dirt cheap on most of the PlayStation stores, Xbox stores, whatever. Pick it up, play it. If you really like episodic game, this is a one that you should play, because it just flew, as I've said, flew under the radar for so many people.
And there are 5 episodes involved.
And there are 5. We got the OG 5 thing there.
Yeah,
5 episodes, so you can't go wrong with that.
Okay.
I thoroughly recommend it. As I said, I won't be blamed for the bugs and stuff. I think the story does hit here and there, but actually, as an elevated experience in the episodic genre, I think it gives it that. I think like you play it and you're like, nothing. I don't even think, even to an extent, Life is Strange 1 matches it, because even the rewind mechanic is its core element. This has many core elements. They're juggling constantly, and especially with as I said, the RPG integration in an episodic game. It was. I was surprised it never caught on at that time. I thought people would be like, "Oh shit,
yeah,
this is really cool," and then maybe even Telltale had been like, "You know what? Maybe we should try and do something like that. And we'll put it into our games and kind of elevate the experience." But if you have played the console, you'll understand it from the way that I'm talking about. But as I said, Cell 100% recommend, because you play it with just the mystique and intrigue of the setting. Very H.P. Lovecraft inspired. A lot of inspiration from that. A lot of the gothic feel of it. As I said, I'm not going to ruin the game, but like, when you're on the island, as it's mentioned as well, when you arrive there, it's like, I'm like, oh my god, I'm like, this is like setting itself up like see, it feels like arriving at Count Dracula's castle, the way it sets itself up. It's like, oh, it's like, this is really kind of thing. And it just, as I said, very interesting. And I think maybe for me more so, I think I was more interested in it because it was episodic, but also my history, because obviously the historical figures, Napoleon, George Washington, Manuel Godoy, many others in there as well. And then also kind of like there's obviously a political dynamic to the game as well, because all these figures are there. But I'll leave it at that. I would recommend you play it though.
For sure. And this game came out in March 2018. Wow.
Yeah, 2018. Damn. 5 episodes, all out, boom, done. And it was really enjoyable, actually. As I said, would recommend. But I feel like we'll end this here because we done spread the arts. And thank you again for tuning in. As I said, a bit more bare bones early on because we used some of the news from our episode for Anastasia's episode, which you should definitely check out. But I hope you enjoyed this episode. Please do leave us a subscribe, like, turn on notifications, comment as well. It does help you keep up to date with our content. It's not necessarily about YouTube algorithms thing. It helps you to stay up to date with all the content coming to this channel. And also, as I said before, StrangeCast is available on podcast services. So you're on Spotify, YouTube, your Spotify, your Apple Podcasts, your Amazons. We're on everything like that. And Life After Strange will return next month. So Katie will be on. As you know, we sat down, me and her had a very interesting conversation. I was very surprised. I threw some. You'll see the dynamic of it. It's not just what's your favorite scene of Steph, which I did think I do ask. But I feel like, as I say in that episode, I feel like the evolution of Steph Gingrich is the evolution of Katie Bentz. So I feel like that's something you'll kind of find interesting through a couple of for me personally, I thought very hard hitting questions, and I think she delivered really some unbelievably great responses. So stay tuned for that. But as I said, we will now be back in 2 weeks for StrangeCast. In between that, you'll get your Life After Strange episodes. So do stay tuned to Player One versus the World. We'll be back at some point with more Life is Strange content, Deck 9 news, Square Enix news, Don't Nerd news. We'll be covering all of them, and the Expanse news. We'll be covering everything. So until then, guys, take care. We'll see you soon.
Peace out.